And so the title is Integrating a Major Acquisition in Japan. This is, I thought what I'd start out with, just let me just give you a quick overview of the company. There's a lot of data up here, and so you can look at the data while I just talk for a little bit. We are focused, as Rochelle said, on embedded systems. You can think about your car, the dashboard, all the digitization on the clusters, as we call them, all the body control. Toyota is our largest customer. We're also in all the BMWs. So if you're making car decisions, stick with Toyota or BMW. That's good for us. Body control is a big part. All the electronics inside the car. Certainly the electronics underneath the hood are a big part of our business, and certainly all the safety pieces. We're very focused on the industrial markets. Medical is a growing part of our business. The smart grid. I look outside and see all the surveillance and new cameras and things that are happening in towns and cities around the world, and that's certainly a big part of our business. And factory automation. We're also in the communications business, so anywhere from routers to even home gateways, anything that really needs secure information and tight information. And in the consumer markets, home entertainment is big. Cameras, obviously high-end digital cameras, wearables, white goods nowadays. We're working on refrigerators that will talk to you, tell you how old your milk is and how long since you last touched a beer inside that refrigerator, and the same with dryers, and this is happening all over the world. It's a very diversified company. If you look at the data up there, we're in 10,000 customers. We're in every country in the world, which makes it complicated. I can tell you from a technology standpoint, post this acquisition, we now have the vital pieces of being able to put an integrated system together for any one of these embedded markets. I look around this room, and there's a bunch of embedded markets in this room that we would certainly be interested in. We have the microcontroller technology, the power management technology, the flash technology, which stores all the data and moves it quickly. And of course, the analog upfront signaling technology. So it's a very, very important acquisition for the company. I'm asked a lot to describe Spansion, and you know, as Rochelle said, I'm relatively new to Spansion, so I don't really take credit for these kind of culture comments. I think they're important, though, as we talk about the integration of a new organization or a set of new organizations. I would describe Spansion as a group that is maniacally focused on execution. You do that when you're in tough businesses. Every detail matters. So I'm very fortunate that I have a group of leaders around the company and a company that has a lot of respect for just getting it done every day and focusing on the smallest details. I'd also describe the company worldwide as a worldwide group that likes to solve very hard problems. Technical problems, business problems, any sort of problem. And I'm very fortunate to have a worldwide organization that's what turns them on, solving difficult things. I'd also describe the group worldwide as having a full appreciation for what quality really means. I think the DNA of the company is such that they will not put customers at risk. Quality is a serious subject at Spansion worldwide. I'm also asked occasionally to describe what I think the values of Spansion are, and I think this is important as I get into the integration. I would describe the values of Spansion, again, as somewhat as an outsider, but now I'm certainly in sculpting those values with everybody else. Teamwork is what's important. It's not uncommon for us to design something in Tel Aviv and have the software done in Munich, to do new product introduction in San Jose, to do the production in Austin, Texas, to do the integration in Shanghai, and for that team to continuously be working together 24/7 and to know each other on a first-name basis and to know a lot about each other. Teamwork is very important to the company, and I'm very fortunate to have that. That's not something you can breed into a large organization. Determination. Rochelle gave a little history in the company. You don't say expansion unless you're a determined person. And again, I'm very fortunate. No matter what the challenge is, folks rise up to it and are determined to match it. And the last one is really flexibility. I don't think you last in these industries without being able to adjust to the many different customer needs, and as it's changed very quickly, so flexibility is certainly the value of the company. I, as CEO, have a number of responsibilities, but foremost is, what's the strategy, John? And it's pretty simple. Every CEO will tell you the same thing. It's profitable growth. If you're not growing, you're dying. And if you're growing, you better be growing profitably. That sounds real easy to say. I can tell you the strategy that we focused on with this acquisition was really one about adjacency, which is an overused word in the business world. In essence, you can focus on what your core business is, and obviously you're crazy if you say we're not going to focus on our core business, but you get better and better at that and grow share. But you can also then acquire or move into adjacent markets, either in newer technologies or newer regions or newer geographies, newer distribution. And clearly in this case, we chose to move into adjacency that happened to be 5,000 miles away, but an adjacency that, from a technical standpoint, was very similar to what we did. It reinforced everything that we had. It's something we could build on and add more things to. And it's very close to our roots. So again, from an integration standpoint, there were a lot of great things going in that would make a lot of sense to people. And that was very important. The third way to grow profitably is really kind of reach past the adjacencies and do something, and we use the phrase blue ocean or white space. And certainly expansion, we're doing all three. But we talked about the adjacency one right now, and I think it's important to remember that a lot of things that were very core to Spansion before it did this were part of the organization that we brought into the company. Quick story on that. There's a moment for each CEO when they bring the new idea to the board. Shut your eyes and think about a CEO bringing a carve out in Japan to a Silicon Valley board and saying this is a good idea and we should go do this. So a tad nervous on what the response would be. The first words that came out was, "That's a bold decision, John." And then I wasn't sure what bold meant. I couldn't wait to get out of the room to go figure out what bold meant. I thought I knew what bold meant. It didn't mean crazy or you're out of your mind. But very supportive. We knew it would be a lot of hard work. Now I wanted to do one thing before I really get into the meat of this, and that is to really talk about what integration means to anybody. And I know people in this room that know integration. And I made a list in the car right before I came in here of what integration really means. And I think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. This is kind of the basic stuff that you better be able to do. And if you screw this up, you're going to put at jeopardy just about everything else. You better be able to integrate payroll. Let me tell you, I've done a lot of deals. You don't integrate payroll well, you're going to have a lot of problems. It's going to affect a lot of things. You better be able to integrate benefits very quickly and do it right. Certainly the supply chain, where the terms and conditions are way different around the world, and you have to get that sorted out very quickly. Technical support, go-to-market strategies are going to be different every region for every product. Terms and conditions and pricing with every one of those 10,000 customers. Don't screw that up. You want to make a mistake in integrating something, signal to your customers that you don't know what you're doing and you're making mistakes. That'll hurt you very quickly. Training. Every employee who joins the company really wants two or three things. They want to know, am I getting paid? Do I have the benefits? And most importantly, do you have a way to train me and make me better and give me more and more opportunities? So training is always a very quick piece of integration that has to take place. There's also policies in any organization we're all familiar with. The important ones are travel. What's your travel policy? Are you going to reimburse me for this, and this? Can I use that little bar in the hotel room or the motel room? Those things, you want to upset new employees or bring, or confuse people, is change that on them. So these things are very important. Expense reimbursement, very big. Quality systems and processes worldwide, huge. Org structure. My absolute favorite, because it's hands down the hardest, is IT systems. And again, you want to slow things down, don't get the IT systems right. And in a carve-out, you're literally turning off the IT systems and starting them up from a new direction, and that's very challenging, and a lot of training has to take place there, and it's done well. You want to lose momentum in any sort of acquisition, screw up the IT systems. The management operating system. Who makes decisions? Why do they make the decisions? Who can input to the decisions? Who gets affected by the decisions? The management operating system is huge. It has to be very thoughtful and executed on. And people are watching. Quotas. You want a disgruntled sales organization, go screw up the quotas. Budget processes. How much can I spend, and how much are you going to count for me? And that has to be done very, very quickly. And the list goes on and on and on. This is the basics. The trick, of course, here is I've done acquisitions where the companies are a mile apart. You can skateboard from one office to the other office, and we screw up these things. Now I'm 16 time zones away, 5,000 miles away. We bought about 40 different offices around the world with this acquisition, so all that had to be coordinated. So in the end, I'm not going to talk about this anymore. Get those things right. If you don't get those things right, all the rest I'm going to talk about, you're taking steps backwards. Oh, and I wanted to remind you that there are a lot of unforeseen issues when you get into that. You learn a whole lot about what you just did, a whole lot of due diligence on. You start to learn every day that your due diligence wasn't exactly correct, and you have to course correct and make hard decisions here. There are really two major issues. The first one that I learned a long time ago, and I learned it over and over and over again, is you can't run a worldwide company on two cultures. It's easier to think about it that way, but if you aren't working very, very hard in trying to bring one culture, and my definition of culture is how do we execute, how do we work together, how do we communicate to each other, what are we about, what are we trying to get done? Is everybody on the same page? And you know, I really view organizations as like blobs of jelly, and you can form the jelly one way or the other way, but when you take your hands away, it's going right back to that same shape. So you really have to stay focused on it. There's lots of ways to change management. Here, my view, you better have a strong vision, a set of values that you can articulate, a strong culture that you can articulate that grabs everybody. And specificity is very important because you're really talking to each individual. Everybody needs to feel affected by this. That takes time, and it takes a tremendous amount of communication over and over and over again. And in this case, it takes a lot of translators. I wrote a lot of translators, and vice versa, back and forth, to make sure the communication is happening. You have to listen to be able to adjust. Number two up there is invest in relationships deep into the organization, and that takes more time. When you announce day final, when you announce an acquisition, there's a tremendous amount of fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And you need to overcome that every day, 24/7, because it's not going to go away right away. And if you can imagine, in this case, in Japan, American CEO, there's not a lot of good American CEO stories in Japan. I mean, I had horns coming right out of my head. All you had to do was go to one movie and realize that I'm going to behave this way. And so there are certainly biases that you have to be able to overcome. I think the other piece there is you need to quickly onboard a leadership team. And it's easy before you kind of go live and actually cut the check and own the organization to say, you'll be a leader, you'll be a leader, you'll be a leader. The true leaders are the ones that quickly you need to be able to figure out, and they have to buy in completely. And because when you get on the Narita Express and go back to the airport and leave, they are the ones that have to make sure it's all happening and moving in the right direction for you. So that's a very high priority for us, for me. The third one up there is identify the synergies early on and build on these. Be timely, be very public about them inside the organization. You're empowering people. And I think the biggest role I have in that is blowing up obstacles. You got to make your folks successful. And I'm certainly in the best position in the company to knock down walls and knock down obstacles, either internally or external to the company. And people need to see that speed matters. If we go slow, I've never met anybody who's done an integration that says, "I wish we had gone slower." Doubt you have either. It's always, "I wish we would have gone faster." So I'll mention that a few more times. Next up there is be willing to change. This is my baseball analogy here. See it and hit it. Trust yourself. When I do this, I have a 30-day plan, a 60-day plan, a 90-day plan, a 180-day plan, a 360-day plan, a 3-year plan, and all these things listed out. And I'm very quick to be able to move some out and slide some in, and constantly be readjusting. Listen carefully and be flexible. Question everything. One of the most important things, the ones that can make you look the best, is keep your customers happy. Because every customer, the second they see the press release, is looking at it going, "Boy, you're going to screw this up." Let me just look for that one piece of data that you screwed up, because I know that you won't be able to pull this off. And so they notice. You stay very focused on pleasing customers. As far as the speed goes, generate wins, anchor them. Make sure if you are moving things forward, make sure everybody understands we got to this point and celebrate that, and make sure people know we're building momentum. And so really anchor the movement forward, count them. It doesn't matter what the language is or what the culture is. People see movement, see us moving toward a goal, and it's certainly uplifting, and you build the alignment. The goal on this chart really is, how do you get everybody on the same page? The word we use is alignment, and it's a powerful thing. If you can get 4, 5, 6, 10,000 people aligned worldwide in many different cultures to move in the same direction with the same goals in mind. Oops. All the way. The other one that I think is an elephant in the room that I should bring up is, any expert will tell you that 60, 70, 80% they make up different numbers fail. And what's the definition of fail? I'm not really sure, but this is hard. I think failure really is that we able to profitably grow the organization really. But the numbers are staggering at how hard this is, and a lot of it has to do with the marketplaces that you're in. I'm just going to read the bottom part of this chart. There's a lot on it. To make organizational structure a competitive advantage, a company needs to start at the very top by clearly defining their strategy and then tailoring the organization accordingly. And there's pieces to that. One is talent. My belief is you need to bring talent from outside the company in addition to bringing the talent that you just acquired in, and cross-pollinating that with the talent that you have already in the company. And that's very challenging, but they need to know they're a big part of it. Performance management is huge. You reward folks that should be rewarded, that have the values, that are doing the things that are important. And there's lots of ways to reward people, but that's really performance management, is watching that very closely. It takes time. Role clarity, oh my gosh. Fear, uncertainty, and doubt drives confusion, and if I don't know what I'm doing, most of the people in my group aren't going to know what they're doing, and this is where you can quickly implode, and this is probably the hardest part, which is to get to the 1,000 people scattered around the world and make sure that their new roles are very clear to them, and a huge challenge. And then the final thing is structure, and I never get structure right. It's a constant. It's a weakness of mine. And I'm constantly working on it. I don't constantly change the structure because it confuses people more. I tell people, if you don't like the guy you're working for, the lady you're working for, the good news is it'll change. So don't get too worried about it. But structure is a very, very important thing with the message at the top. Where's Mo? Okay, now I'll get into, I think, the other big elephant in the room, in particular, this deal, if you will. This integration is this? Yeah, here we go. There you go. Thank you. This deal was done in Japan. This is a Japanese company. This is Fujitsu. These are folks that have been doing world's best for 30 years. I mean, they're Toyota's #1 supplier on electronics. These are proud folks. And you're going to come and tell me what I need to change? I don't need to change. I need to, you need to get out of my way, John, so I can keep doing what I've been doing. So obviously, maybe 25% of the folks spoke English. That was daunting to me. I've been amazed at how folks, and I'm just not capable of learning Japanese. I barely speak English. I've been amazed at how people have really worked to improve their English. They were very nervous about that at the beginning. I tried to say it's not important. As long as we're figuring out a way to communicate. I walk around with a yellow pad and I make notes and pictures and draw them and show them to people. But what's been amazing over the last year is every review, we spent a lot of time going over things, is how English has improved and our communication has improved. In fact, for Golden Week, you lose a week. And the Monday when everybody comes back and you have that conference call, you can see how the English was not used for a week. And you spend a lot of time saying, what? What did you just say? And so that is a challenge, but that's a challenge I've had my entire career everywhere in the world. But again, the team there has really risen to that challenge. I wanted to start talking about Japan, and I had preconceived notions after 25, 30 years of doing business in Japan. I have great long-term business partners in Japan. Great. Tremendous relationships. Better than I probably have anywhere else in the world when I really thought about it. Stronger. I could count on it more. Trust means a lot in Japan. A lot. Other parts of the world, I trust you on Friday, maybe not Monday, business. Relationships are really important in Japan. These are things, the kind of things that excited me about this, and knew that we could pull this off and make this work. And the fourth thing I wrote down is quality matters in Japan. It really matters. It's not marketing. You screw up in quality, and it's not. You're going to take a huge step backwards. I think it's important to understand kind of the history and the geography of Japan. Obviously, there's real experts in this room. The history of Japan I didn't know a whole lot about, but the history of Japan really is, for long periods of time, it was an isolated culture, isolated society, and then it would open up for a period of time, then close back down again for a long period of time, and then open up. And that's important to understand because there is this, certainly this very strong Japanese spirit that is hard to understand if you're somebody like me, but when you think it through, it's very obvious. That is the most important thing. They'll adapt to other things, but that Japanese spirit, that is paramount. So the history, I think, plays a very, very big role. The geography, you folks know, it's 4 major islands and about 3,000 other islands. My understanding is only about 20% of the land is actually agriculture. 75% is mountains. And that means 10-15% is where 127 million people live. I think it's something like 800, 900 people per square mile. And that drives a lot of spirit and cohesion, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a second. So, understand some things about the history, and certainly in this case, the geography. And I try to do that in just about everywhere where we make a big footprint or try to grow a business. Next one up there is obviously a very homogeneous population that's driven by that history and geography, but it's amazing. Everybody is the highest literacy rate in the world, bar none. That is powerful, powerful. As far as efficiency and productivity, if you're somebody in business, it's very, very powerful. The other stat, and I don't know if this is correct, 98% of the population is ethnic Japanese. You're talking 1 or 2% are ethnic Chinese or Korean, or taking out obviously the more transient part of the population. So the very, very homogeneous population. I grew up in New York. I wouldn't even know. I can't even begin to and I'm not going to try to. I think it's tremendous. Next one up there, it might be a little bit controversial. It's a very different political and educational system that I've noticed over 20, 25 years. On the political side, I grew up, we debate everything. I mean, you have there'll be 4 opinions on one issue. I mean, everybody's got, there's a debate. That's what we do in the U.S. Japan is less debate about it. That's done really more, behind closed doors by professional bureaucrats and politicians, and decisions are made. And clearly over the last 10, 15 years, a lot of different decisions are made, and that of course has driven a lot of different behavior. And I think really has woken up a lot of people, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a second. And the educational system is paramount. I mean, it's amazing. Guidelines are driven and followed by the Ministry of Education. Uniformity, not diversity, is certainly what they're focused on and encouraged. A quick story, it was just on this last trip, is I missed one senior person at a dinner, and I said, "Where is Miura-san?" And they said, "Well, Miura-san failed his English class, so their English test. So he's not going to be part of the team." And I was like, "No, that's all right." But that is a big part that he needed to pass that and work on it. That's new to me, obviously. When I left graduate school, I was done with school. I think on the social and cultural rules are complex. This is by hands down the most important part, and the one I'll never really be able to participate in. But people have relationships in a very vertical or hierarchical way. It's based on sex and your age and your rank, and what school you might have gone to, what your occupation is. It's very complicated for somebody like me. And I learn constantly about it. It's not something I can walk into a meeting room in, or anybody on my team can walk into a meeting room and quickly decide, okay, those are the relationships. But it's certainly well understood by everybody else, and you have to respect that. You have to understand that that's going to drive a lot of behavior. On the scale of respectful and rudeness, again, as a New Yorker, I'm over here. If you want me to be rude, I was brought up that way. There's no problem. I'll sleep well tonight. It's okay. That's just not going to happen. All the communication is going to be on this end of the spectrum. All the hard communication, and we're in hard businesses. We're going to have hard conversations, but it's going to be through that viewpoint. So very respectful. And this is the hard one for me to figure out how to say. That ethics and values are kind of judged and used by the social situation. So what was the right thing to say and do in this social situation is going to be completely different than this one over here, and that makes perfect sense to people, and it doesn't to me. I mean, I've had to get used to that and be thoughtful about that and think about it, and that is a big challenge. But where I'm going with this is you can't change those things. You have to make it part of your culture. The team there adapts around this, and there's a lot of energy in that, and recognizes that we're not out trying to say that Spansion Japan should be behaving differently as much as we need to meet these kind of objectives, and we need to work together to get there. Oops. Here I think is second to last chart. One thing and again this might be somewhat controversial for folks. This is a spectrum. Values decide what is right or wrong, true or false, positive, negative. I'm a big believer in this. Talk about the values of an organization. You can't change values. You can have aspirational values and kind of reward people and ask them to move in that way. You can't change the heritage of folks anywhere in the world. You just need to keep reinforcing the values that will work inside this company with what we're trying to accomplish. But it's those values which is the real fabric that holds the company together. I mean, I don't hold the company together. It's the company's values that hold the company together. That's the fabric that's going to hold it together. When I'm sleeping or not paying attention. And in every region in the world there's a spectrum like this, at least in my mind. And I chose these. And I started from, maybe folks have seen this, I would have used this chart, but I found it to be somewhat offensive. It's a stereotypical, it's a triangle. And at the top was South America, Italy, Spain. And it says next to it, you can expect warm, emotional, impulsive conversation and culture. And every decision, you're not really sure what kind of response you're going to get out of it. And that's at the top of this triangle. And then on the lower right-hand side, if I remember right, was Japan and some of the Asian companies, and it says courteous, accommodates, and listens, and very reactive. And so that group of folks is there is a cause and effect, and then over on the left-hand side of the bottom end of the triangle, and these are the people who probably put the chart together, are the Germans, the U.S., and folks in the U.K. And it's cool, factual, and decisive. Very linear. Who do you think put the chart together? But what's interesting about that is that is how many parts, as a worldwide company, that's constantly going to be dealing with other parts of the world, as I mentioned earlier. People are going to use prisms like that. And so it's not just integrating into Japan, you got to integrate across the entire world and drive change in behavior around the world to make it actually work. The obvious perception of business people who haven't done business long in Japan, I think too slow in Japan, too formal, too vague, too polite. Don't want to do business. I don't understand what goes on, John. I'd much rather go to China, and there I get punched in the face, and I know exactly where we stand, and I do the deal, and I get on the plane and leave. And this is really, really hard for me. That's what you have to overcome with the organization you have, and I'd say we've been very successful at that. It's very uplifting for me to see people. Open up their minds and think differently. But on this spectrum, and this is my cut at it, on the left-hand side would be how people would look at folks in Japan, and on the right-hand side would be how folks look at probably the rest of Spansion. On the left-hand side, as I said earlier, it's very vertically driven by age and occupation, and relationships are hierarchical. And on the right-hand side, folks in this room know that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that we're all created equal, right? We're taught that from second grade on. In fact, if you can do the job, you'll get the job. And that's might not be true, but that's what we're taught. And that's certainly the way I think. And that's, the older I get, the less I believe it. But certainly it's been my attitude for a long time. Below that is group versus individual. This one is fascinating to me the more I read. And by the way, the McKinsey book that you mentioned is outstanding. It's outstanding. I find it very, very enlightening. Groups really driven by affiliation. you know, and the way to think about it really is it's not being a yes person to be part of the group, which is what you would say on the right-hand side. It's really a sign of self-discipline and inner strength and sacrifice when you really start to understand it. Hard to change that, and it's very strong. Individualistic is the fittest survive. And we're in Silicon Valley. I can walk out the front door right now and find 3 people that'll fit that that definition. I mean, we're absolutely trained and geared for that. I mean, that had to be reined in a lot of cases, and we struggled with that. We struggled with that, right? I was rewarding people for that kind of behavior up until now, and now all of a sudden I have to figure out a way to say, no, that's just. I suffer from this one daily. I suffer from it today. I was like, oh, God, don't do it that way. Harmony versus aggressiveness, and my favorite story there is this probably about 6-9 months ago, a very large auto supplier walking along the back dock with the chief operating officer. We walked by a truck in which they were loading up their truck, and it's on the side of it said Toyota. And we walked about another 10 yards, and there was in the second truck, and it said Nissan. Walked about another 10 yards, and there was a third truck, and it said Honda. And I think there was a 4th truck, I think it said Kawasaki. So, you know, they were supplying the motorcycle guys also. The man who was explaining to me why he has different names on each one of the trucks is because he's trying to have a strong relationship. The customers like that. You know, it's harmony, and there's no way he's going to change it. My reaction was, Jesus, we can outsource all this. Why would we be doing this? And I had to catch myself. I could save a bunch of money by getting rid of this. And you know, that to me describes really you know, aggressiveness versus searching for that harmony. And let me tell you, harmony is not a bad thing to have when you're going through a lot of ups and downs, and you have trust and you have, you know, true partnership, and you know, and there's a long history of that kind of respect, and certainly something I've learned over and over in this. Next was conformity versus defiance, one of my favorites. Conformity is, as I said, is a way to act in almost every situation. Rarely is it, you know, can I understand exactly why somebody acts in a different situation, but it's driven really by the values and the ethics. Hard to understand. History does matter. Defiance, you know, I was trained to question authority. I was. Why are we doing this? Why are we doing that? We shouldn't have to do that. We shouldn't do this. Why are we doing that? That's how I got ahead. A lot of the folks on my team, that's how they got ahead. You know, so let's go question everything and try to change it and be defiant. And probably the last one is probably the most controversial, and this is one that struck me just over the last year or so. Primarily at the highest levels, emotional versus rational. I can't tell you how many times I've been pulled into a conference room with a senior executive of large companies in Japan, the door shut, and it's always a him, screaming. That just doesn't happen to me in the U.S. It doesn't happen to me in Germany. It doesn't happen to me in China. It doesn't happen. It's just raw emotion. And what you know, as I look back at it and I learned about it, I clearly, or not necessarily me, but somebody on my team overstepped some line, some bound. And obviously, you know, the way I've been trained is, you know, be pragmatic. Capitalism is pragmatism. You know, very objective driven. There's a means to the end. You know, don't have to be emotional about it. Just go get it done. And so that's been a big piece of what we're continuously working through. Okay. Oops, I keep doing that. Last chart. So let me summarize. One culture has to be the focus. That doesn't happen overnight. It has to be worldwide. It's very challenging. That's how all great companies are. How do great companies get to be great? Is they have a culture, and they just keep repeating it and repeating it and repeating it. It's a flywheel. It takes time. It takes a lot of effort, and it doesn't mean that it has to be adapted. One culture has to be adopted when you put two organizations together. It does mean that you can bring things together and be aspirational on how we want to end up here. The second thing is alignment with every employee is really, really important if you want to be successful, particularly in integration like this when there's a lot of confusion, a lot of shock and awe. When we announced this deal, I was in Japan and I went and saw all the large customers, shock and awe. I mean, supposedly you're dead, John. I don't even know what, and now you just bought, this sacred supplier of mine. And last I read, John, you were bankruptcy, and bankruptcy in Japan means dead. I mean, why are you even sitting here? Meeting after meeting after meeting. 3 months later, I go back. We kept delivering. I'm still here. I'm not going away. 3 months later, you go back again. I'm still here. I haven't screwed up yet. I haven't dropped the ball yet, John. And just keep knocking it down. I would say that no matter how much you plan and how perfectly you practice that swing in baseball and think it all through, your ecosystem is going to change way faster than you think it will be. I mean, we're in the age of, in my business, the Internet of Things, cloud. There is globalization is well understood around the world. Everybody's doing it a little bit different, but everybody knows there's going to be winners and losers. So I think very sophisticated, fast-moving ecosystems that are different in every part of the world, and for that to be understood, and it's going to change continuously. And have your eyes open for that, because that'll drive a whole bunch of behavior. Domestic economies need to export to grow. There were years, 5-10 years ago, where it was pretty clear. I think particularly in Japan that they didn't need the rest of the world to grow or to succeed, and from a business standpoint, from an economic standpoint, it's clear now. Everybody understands. You better be able to sell in China. You better be able to sell in Korea. You better be able to sell, throughout Southeast Asia. You better be able to knock down those walls in the U.S. and Europe if you really want to succeed on as an economy. And that's been fascinating and fun to be about. It's really, a lot of it has to do with just marketing and because there's tremendous technology in Japan. I put study abroad up here, and then I remembered I actually did go overseas for a semester in college, but I'm old enough now where I can't even remember. But what I meant by study abroad is that your passport's got to get real thick. I'm not home a lot. I got to get out. I got to listen. I got to talk. I got to listen. I got to talk. I got to listen. I got to talk. My team has to do that. I think one of the biggest issues for my company right now is I have a lot of burnt out senior executives. It's not easy. You're on airplanes a lot and you're talking to a lot of people. But that was what we signed up for. We knew that when we were doing this. I just got to try to make sure that none of them fall apart on me. Culture, again, is how you execute. You need to understand the context, as I was pointing out before, in which decisions are being made, or at least heard. And that is by far the trickiest, and you're not going to be right a lot of the time. You're going to make a lot of mistakes, but you got to quickly be there to change it and make it right. The next one up there I think is very, very important. I view my job as a CEO to be able to, for every employee in the company, to define what I call a meaningful outside. Where's the world going, where we're going, why do we fit into it, who are we, what we could do better, what we could do worse. The second thing is I think it's my job to define what businesses we're in and what businesses we're not in. Make sure that we are focused. And this is the hard one, and I've screwed this one up many times in my career. I think my job is to connect history to future, because you can't just go in and say, here's the future, here's the future, here's the future. I got to understand what your history is, and that takes time. And it's different for many, many different people. And in the case of our carve-out in Japan, it's actually 33 different offices across Japan, obviously, mostly in Osaka, Nagoya, Tokyo area, and in Yokohama along that route, but a lot of small offices, each one is a microcosm culture. And just the way it would be anywhere in the world. And so understand the history and the future for each one and make it meaningful for people. The last one up there is, I said it earlier, nobody's ever done an integration, and integrations take 10 years. They don't take a year. And said, boy, I wish we'd gone slower. It's never happened. speed does matter. You know, make decisions. You can then unturn the decision. It's better to make it first and to drive the organization and build confidence and build, and as I said earlier, anchor. Hold folks accountable. Very, very important because everybody's watching, everywhere. As I said earlier, I have a 30-day plan, a 90-day plan, a 180-day plan, a 360-day plan, and a 3-year plan. I carry it around with me right now. I change it all the time based on what I'm learning, but we're getting these things done, and that's important for people to understand. And the last one up there is you can't communicate enough. Just can't. Just talk. Now back to my baseball analogy. The two-strike mentality, the odds are very, very low. Very low. Recognize that when you have 2 strikes on you. It's all about prior preparation. Do all the basics really, really, really well and be uncompromising there. Trust yourself. As I said earlier, see ball, hit ball. Because you're going to see a lot of different balls thrown at you. And just trust your motion and your swing, and you know,